Hi everyone, this is Philip. Sorry the live connection with the Kaika didn't work out so well. Seems like whenever I try to join, the sound messes up a little bit, so I'll try to do a short little one here on my own. Just to kind of add on to what those guys say, just to say those guys are doing a great job. It's awesome that they're able to keep everyone so well informed. And I was going to just take advantage of the information I can provide in addition to what they got going on. So let me start off here. I don't have super long, but I will take questions. Let me go through some of the maps that I got going on first. Let's see. So the first thing I was going to show you guys is actually the thermal image that was just released. Well, not just released. It is from today. But so here's an image of the thermal image that released by USGS. So see some similar things going on. Down in here is Fissure 8, right? The big channel moving to the northeast, splitting, coming together. All that's pretty much the same. Kind of moving all the way over to where the flow is still going to the ocean at Kapuho, right? There's one big channel that's pushing to the ocean, but you kind of see there's a lot of hot edge. Oops. All the way down through here also. It's all hot lava kind of leaking out the edge, just kind of like pancaking out down there. So that's still very much active. I just wanted to show you guys this thermal image. There's ocean entry. You can kind of see some stuff going on. It's hard to see what is actually the shoreline, what's going on underwater. Maybe there's some hot sand in there. It's hard to really say, but very much active all through here. And even if the channel isn't going directly to the south edge, it's definitely still pancaking out this whole ballooning area to the south right down there. So that's the main what's going on here as far as the main channel. But also what's going on is Fissure 18 has also reactivated or is spattering again. You can see some of the heat right there. It's in relation to 16, here it is to the southeast. It's not putting out a big flow as it is right now, but you can see that it actually is reactivated, spattering from 16 and 18. 16 is not on this map, but it is actually flowing. So that's the thermal image it was released today. So let's go back to the main website and look at the map that was just released. And just so if you guys don't realize, this is all from the HVO, right? hvo.wr.usgs.gov is the main site. So here's a map that was released from yesterday, and let's let it load. It's going to show basically the same thing I just showed you guys from the thermal image. My internet's a little bit slow here. It's probably part of my issues. But okay, here's the main map, the main flow. There's a little bit of red way down here. That's the edge I was showing you guys just now. That's still active, kind of leaking out a little bit. On here, they're showing a former coastline, right? So you see a lot of land has been added on. And as this guy's mentioned before, it's really steep out here, so it's kind of hard to predict how much farther it can really build to the east without kind of starting to collapse and regrow and collapse and regrow, as we were saying before. The Fissure 16 and 18 area is basically flowing over lava that was already erupted, so there's nothing new to add to the map right there. But they're kind of in those bolder dark colors just to kind of show that they are active, in fact. All right, so that's the map update. Fissure 8, there it is, the main pathway. There's the elbow like I talked about earlier today. All the overflows have been on this edge over here, but nothing kind of going further on. Even the small overflows we've seen have not been enough to cause any major breaches. It's basically just lapping over the edge. Same thing down here in the south that I've heard about, similar kind of thing, but nothing major changed there for us to kind of worry about. The area that John drew in a map right here, a little extra flow right along this kind of steep ascent. You guys realize this line is kind of pointing down in that direction that way, right? So it's kind of it's filling in. It's kind of a little bit it's hard to call it a valley exactly, but this path is kind of flowing it away from the direction it wants to go. So it's probably not going to go that way very, very fast. It's more about this big outburst we're kind of worried about. If that whole volume somehow gets diverted, which seems less and less likely the longer it stays established, that's good for us, but if that were to change, that's kind of what would be the biggest fear we have, right? But there's no reason to believe that's going to happen at any point soon, so we can kind of put that off for now. A couple other things I wanted to show you guys were there's some recent imagery. Here's from the photo and video page on the USGS. So the things that I found the most interesting, we have images of the ocean entry. It's pretty similar to before. But what I thought was really the most dramatic changes are going on here at the summit. So here's an image. I'll have to wait for it to load once again. Image of the summit collapses. So one thing that's been reported is it's not just that inner hole. I mean, the deepest part of the crater has been collapsing down, but all of the edges have been kind of slumping in, coming into that lowest section. Even the upper rims that aren't exactly collapsing in, or definitely sagging down into that deep hole that kind of formed here. Let's get the image loaded. Let's put it back. All right, so it's hard to really judge where anything is. The Jagger Museum would be like up here off the image to the right. Over here, this is the old parking lot right there. The old road kind of goes through there. You can see some of the tracks that people were driving through before, but maybe that's what that is. It's kind of hard to see, but here's the old parking lot shape. You see these big cracks have gone right through it. The parking lot's toast. Probably that road is partly toast as well, because these big cracks, this whole area is moving and sagging in this direction, right? The old trail to the overlook was kind of over this space right here is a big hole, right? So where we used to stand, I don't know, 15 years ago was somewhere in now this middle of the air right here. So that's really one of the most dramatic things to those of us who have been around Kīlauea and Halemaumau for a long time. So let's see. There was another image released that I thought was very informative as well. Let's scroll down to the previous day, actually. Where is it? This is it right here. And let's let it load once again. So as far as changes from 24, it seems like there's a lot of differences, right? I think I heard something like 22 different events have occurred in this sequence today. But I'm not, so the intensity, the height of them is something that's really kind of hard to compare. I mean, I at this point have, I suppose, stopped trying to use 24 as a real direct guide for what's happening now, and I'm kind of seeing this as a whole new way of looking at things. Maybe 24 was wholly different than today, and it's kind of really hard to compare it. I'm kind of holding off. It's hard for me to really say without being there and seeing these things in close detail, but here's the images released by USGS. This is basically a animated GIF sequence of the changes in a volcano. So here, kind of the main crater, the main overlook, you can kind of see here in the foreground. I've always looked at this bump in the foreground as a real distinctive feature that you can compare lots of old photographs to right there. So that's all stable and the same. The original overlook pit was somewhat right in here. Obviously the eastern crater wall, because we're looking from the kind of north-south, northeast, southwest, something like that. This whole edge is definitely grown, right? And if you look at this image, you can kind of see, watching this edge, it definitely starts sinking in here, right? It's on a loop. Right, you guys can see how clearly that edge has been not so much collapsing in, but sagging down, right? So whatever was underneath it, holding it up, the magma that was there has left. The area underneath might be kind of spongy, right? So the area maybe took a little while to sag, or maybe more magma has left that area. I can't really say. But certainly it's been sagging down right through there, right, all the way to here. This edge over here looks kind of stable, but everything down this whole block is definitely sagging, and that's been fairly new. What was new last week was the other edge over at this west edge, right? Look at that thing. That's pretty impressive, right? It's been dropping down. I think I heard something like 40 meters, 120 feet, something like that. And not only that, this inner portion in here has also been dropping down, right? So the old crater floor here is down something like at least 100 feet lower than it was before. So that's just a few weeks' time. It's amazing to see how the landscape can change so much. All right, these have been the most striking images I've showed you guys so far. Here, I'll switch back the camera. I don't have a huge amount of time today, but I'm welcome to field any other questions you guys might throw at me right now, and let's see what else I can show you guys while I do that. Look at the earthquakes. Earthquakes have still been focused around Halemaumau. It's not surprising given the videos I just showed you guys, that sequence of the ground collapsing. I've seen some reports of earthquakes somewhere else, like someone was mentioning, I don't like to give the guy credit by saying his name, but saying the USGS is hiding earthquakes. I really have a hard time believing that. I mean, that when I was working with the USGS as a volunteer, that was my job was, figuring out how to plot these earthquake data on maps in close to real time, understanding computers are the ones doing the analysis, and understanding that there are a lot of errors that go into that, right? I mean, a computer is only as good as its programmer. That's usually kind of the catch of it, right? So even as a volunteer, I was kind of doing some of that programming. I made mistakes, we'd go back and fix them. Whenever you add new stations anywhere, you have to kind of redo the math, redo the, kind of optimize the geometry of your network to match the locations of where the earthquakes are, and you'd always compare them. You take that data and do it by hand and compare it to what the computer is doing and try to analyze, compare back and forth, see how you can make a computer program a little better, right? So and working with those guys, I mean, those guys, live for interesting earthquakes, right? They have no reason to be hiding earthquakes from anybody. I think that whole idea just sounds ludicrous to me, right? That they're trying to hide earthquakes from people. So just wanted to address that. Okay, so will the crater ever refill with lava? I would say absolutely yes. So Halemaumau has a long history of change, basically. One of the amazing things about it is it's changed for every person that's come and seen it for the past 150 years. For Westerners, longer than that, yeah, almost 200 years for Westerners now. And going beyond that to the Hawaiians who are here and described in their chants, the big changes happened at the volcano, right? We've told a story in a tours a long time ago about Pele and Hiaka, and how the story of Hiaka really records the part where she is at Kīlauea caldera and she's digging for Lohi'au's body. It's really recording the collapse of the caldera. So the Hawaiians witnessed that, recorded it in their oral tradition, and have passed it on to us in that story, right? To kind of add to that, the flow that came from that eruption is the one that went down all the way to Hilo, that covered what's most of HPP and where I live today in Fern Forest. That's what we call the Aila'au flow. I might suggest that colloquially we might, in common language, we might call it the Hiaka flow, actually, because it's not the same as what Hawaiians are describing as the era of Aila'au, which preceded that, right? So what we call the Aila'au eruption today geologically is actually the end, or after the end of Aila'au cultural era, right? There's a little bit of a disconnect there as far as the naming goes, so it's a little confusing for sure. Yeah, so the crater has collapsed a lot. Collapsed, refilled, collapsed, refilled. That's kind of what it does over the course of at least human history, right? So the main feeder source for Kīlauea comes up underneath Halemaumau, right? We're talking, I've seen in the news, finally made a news that there actually is more than one magma chamber. We've known that for a while. I learned about it there was a conference in Kona, it's probably almost 10 years ago now, talking about how they can measure the chemistry of different eruptions, lava tapped from different sources. That's kind of how we get at that. But basically, it's pretty complex. We've known it's more complex than we've imagined it for some time. So we're not exactly sure how one chamber gets tapped instead of another one once, or during one eruption, or differently in a second eruption. But we do know there are different sources down there. Our big question is still how it all connects to the East Rift Zone, and can we get a bypass, so to speak, of that summit region like we did at Pu'o'o, for 35 years. And as John capably mentioned, that's a very rare thing. It has happened, of course, and obviously the most recent thing that happened is what gets our attention, but most of the time, that's not how it goes. If you remember driving through the national park at any point, most eruptions there last a few days, a few weeks, the sign that says like July 74, it's all within 1 month, right? So most eruptions are short, at least in the time that we have actually seen it. So yes, I fully expect Halemaumau to fill with lava at one point again. It may not be like a continuous thing. We know Halemaumau has had lava lakes for as many as 100 years in a row. We also know that after the 24 eruption, it took a long time for it to kind of reshape itself. I believe later in 24, there was something like 4 or 7 days of lava that kind of pushed through the rubble and made a new flat spot. And then similar the next year, another maybe a week or so of days of lava. Then next year or 2 years later, same kind of thing. For a long time, it might have taken something like 9 eruptions over 10 years to kind of refill, refill the rubble and make it kind of a, kind of reshape the floor so it actually looked like we remembered it recently. So yes, absolutely, lava will come back through there for sure. It's just a matter of when, right? It's not if, but certainly when. So as far as how long this collapse is going to happen, I don't think we have really any idea, right? We've imagined that the 24 event shaped Halemaumau into its half-mile size previous to this year, and we're maybe seeing a new way of things happening, of a collapse, a big eruption in a rift zone, pulling all the magma out and happening more through collapse than through explosion. Certainly, the biggest eruption that we refer to, the one that the geologists call Kīlauea, the one that I think maybe we could call the Hiaka flow, perhaps, just among the commoners, not geologists. That's the one that basically drained the caldera, right? So the whole caldera is a fancy word for the biggest crater in a volcano, right? It usually happens over the magma chamber. So the size of the crater kind of more or less corresponds to the size of the magma chamber underneath there. So if we see the caldera of Kīlauea is something like 2 by 3 miles across, then at some point down there, the magma chamber might actually be that size, right? So we're seeing a small part of it collapsing, the part around Halemaumau, maybe the part that's the uppermost kind of mushroom head of it collapsing, but there's definitely a lot more down there, and it can keep sagging for a while. You'd say that the maximum limit would be the whole caldera. That's basically why it's there. But that was an eruption that lasted something like 60 or 80 years. So we're not expecting it to be that big, at least, not unless this continues for a long, long time. And there is no evidence that that's going to be the case, because that eruption of Kīlauea was actually a summit eruption. It was a summit spilling over and going all the way to the coast, all the way from the top, right? This is actually much different in the fact that lava goes through the pipeline, the East Rift Zone, from the summit through the Rift Zone all the way down to Leilani, where it's coming out of the ground now, bypassing Pu'u today. So Pu'u itself, I believe, is dead. Lava can come out there again. It will at some point. Everywhere in the whole rift zone is fair game. It's all going to erupt again at some point. It's just, playing the odds of whether it happens in one person's lifetime or the next generation's lifetime, and that's kind of how it works, right? But the whole rift zone, the reason that once we made those lava zones, we called them Lava Zone 1, that's where lava is going to come out of the ground for sure, right? Not if, but when, right? For sure. So I've had a lot of questions about, flows beyond this eruption. Once this eruption is over, what might happen to different areas downhill of the rift zone? The risk is the same as it's always been, unfortunately. Maybe we're just kind of waking up to what the risks really are. Trying to understand what the volcano really does after being kind of lulled by 35 years of lava coming out of Pu'u. All right, so I better start wrapping it up, guys. Let me just kind of scroll back and see. Earthquakes are earthquakes caused by plate shifts or degassing. So the earthquakes are basically, an earthquake is a signal of a rock breaking underground, is what it basically is. So why the rock breaks, it could be because whatever was underneath it got pulled away, so it's collapsing and falling in. It could be it's getting pushed from one direction, from the side. That's why there's all different kinds of earthquakes. And people can actually study these, for a whole career. As far as why magma comes up through Kīlauea, that's kind of a big topic, and how far down it's coming from, whether the surface affects it or not, that's kind of a whole big issue that I'll have to address in some other feed at some point later on. I will do that because it's definitely interesting. Okay, will the park reopen anytime soon? I think no. No, I don't think so. I'd say it's going to be, I've been saying it's going to be at least another month away for a whole month now. So, yeah, it's going to be closed for a while, unfortunately. I know it's been really hitting tourism really hard, especially in a volcano area, and I wish I had better news, but I don't expect that to be open anytime soon. So let me kind of look up there. Earthquakes intensify in magnitude. I don't really think so. I think we're kind of into a pattern now. We're gonna keep getting those big 5s and 5.5 kind of explosion style ones. In between those kind of buildup of lots of smaller ones kind of building up to it. So can I show you guys the maps again? Okay, let's do a quick map recap, and I'm gonna wrap it up, and then I gotta wrap up for today. So here's a map that was released on June 11th, right? That's yesterday. It hasn't been a whole lot of change, except what you can see is fissure 8 is still an active fissure. There's been some reactivation in 16 and 18, not really going anywhere. The main flow has been coming this way. The spillovers have happened over the area that's already had lava flow, so it hasn't encroached on any uncovered land so far. And they've all kind of stopped, fortunately, kind of lapped over without causing anything major happening. I don't expect, I think the longer it kind of stays in that configuration, the more stable it becomes. So, you know, I'm kind of hopeful that there won't be any kind of breaches there. One thing that was kind of mentioned that I haven't really addressed so far is that as the lava is flowing through that channel, it kind of, just like a river of lava, a river of water with rocks in it during a flood, it's actually kind of eroding the ground, right? So it can actually carve its way down and carve a slightly deeper channel for it, so it can actually hold more lava over time the longer it kind of stays flowing one direction. So that's also a kind of a positive thing to think of as far as how much lava the thing can hold. And it's kind of still feeding all the way around, kind of gets really widespread in here. The former shoreline, a white dot, and new line kind of going off. The ground is, the ocean floor is quite steep down there, so we expect it to kind of keep collapsing little by little. You know, even if something slightly bigger collapses, it's not going to be like a Pacific-wide tsunami. It might be something where kind of splashes, you know, splashes greatest like in the area around here, right? You know, we might get a small effect, you know, around Kona side or the other islands, but nothing really major that I would, you know, not worry about. This is not like a, you know, a big event in Chile or Alaska or Japan or anything like that. It's very, very much different than that. An analogy I used was if you were to drop, like, let's say some gravel into a swimming pool, right? It's going to cause some splashing in the edges, but, you know, not that much depending on how much gravel you put in at once. If you kind of let it in slowly or a little bit at a time, not as much. Whereas something like a Japan earthquake or Chile or Alaska, I imagine it as dropping in like a whole log into the pool. And you're going to cause a lot of splashing. Whichever way the log's facing is going to splash the most. It's not going to be just one splash. It's going to slosh around for a while, right? That's more or less how I imagine tsunamis happening. So I had also shown a thermal image. Let me go back to that because I think it's more recent and more instructive as well. So there it is. The river of lava is pretty much the same, kind of coming up through here, all the way through here. Here it's spreading out. Definitely some flows along the north edge over here. It's kind of looks cooler but hotter along that southern margin, so it's definitely pancaking out, ballooning out to the south over here. And a big difference being fissure 18 kind of spattering a little bit, not really going anywhere new, kind of covering old ground, right? The ground has been recently covered, I should say. And, you know, that kind of breaks the pattern a little bit, but kind of just put out a word of warning. You know, when things change from one day to the next or a couple of days here and there, it's not enough to really jump the gun and say things are changing in a major way. We have to look at bigger term patterns than that. All right, so I know you guys got more questions. I'll have to address more of those later. Let's see, 130. I don't expect any changes in 130. The USGS is monitoring it every day, so I don't expect anything different with that. They're on it as far as that goes, and everything else really. You know, they probably just have a hard time communicating all the information to everybody. You know, so that's kind of where I'm trying to fill in a little bit. I'm not sure about Hawaiian groups in the park. I know the Hawaiians have a lot of special permissions within a park, but I don't think that this time of eruption is one that they're making any concessions like that. They're just too worried about people's safety and people getting seriously injured out there, right? The ground's moving a lot, right? It's really hard to anticipate what's going to happen, what the hazards are going to be, and to communicate with people when they're down there, in fact. Are the past eruptions that Hanang was emptied out as lava? Yeah, I believe so, yes. Before the 24 explosion was many months ahead of time, the lava lake drained away, so that's happened again and again and again. I can't go into detail right now, but yeah, it has happened. And with that, I got my family waiting for me, so thank you guys. Sorry I had to keep it so short, but I better wrap it up. So good luck to everyone who's dealing with this day to day, and we'll talk to you guys again soon. Stay classy, Puna.